She walked into a party wearing borrowed heels. By the end, she was running a billionaire's empire. Elena Ruiz was mistaken for someone else, but instead of correcting it, she stepped into a world of power, secrets, and betrayal. What began as an accident turned into a battle for respect, love, and truth. When the world doubted her, she didn't break. She rose. And the man who misjudged her? He might just lose everything trying to win her back. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real, unforgettable stories. The music thudded like a heartbeat beneath Elena's feet as she stepped into the rooftop lounge of Astoria Heights Hotel, her breath catching at the view. City lights stretched endlessly, painting the skyline in gold and steel. Everything around her felt borrowed. The dress clinging to her ribs, the heels biting into her ankles, the confident posture she was desperately trying to fake. Her sister Naomi had shoved the black satin dress into her arms that morning with a hissed whisper. "You owe me, Elle. I can't even walk, let alone serve champagne to rich men." Elena had planned to work coat check that night. Low stress, low pay, invisible. But Naomi's injury meant a last-minute substitution, and now she was impersonating a VIP hostess in a place where she didn't belong. Her only job was to glide, smile, serve drinks, and blend in with the wallpaper. No one was supposed to notice her. But someone did. He stood by the glass railing, tall and motionless, a shadow against the skyline. His charcoal suit fit like it was cut just for him, sharp lines, silver cufflinks catching the light every time he moved. He held a drink in his left hand, but didn't take a sip. His eyes, however, were not still. They were locked on her, calm and calculating. Elena looked away quickly, suddenly aware of every shaky breath. She turned, pretending to focus on the bar, but the air shifted. She felt him before she saw him, the soft sound of shoes on marble, measured, deliberate. Then he was standing in front of her, the scent of cedar and something colder filling her lungs. He didn't introduce himself, didn't ask her name. Instead, he looked her up and down once, like checking off details from a list. "You're early," he said, voice low and smooth like scotch. Elena blinked. He tilted his head slightly. Discreet, observant, no entourage. "You came in through the service elevator, smart." "I think you have the wrong." Before she could finish, he slid a sleek black card from the inside of his jacket and pressed it into her hand. There was a gold emblem etched into the plastic. "My office, Tower 2, 9 a.m. And then he walked away. Elena stood frozen, heart pounding, the card burning in her palm like it had weight. She turned to follow him, to say, what, exactly? That she wasn't who he thought she was? That she had no idea what the hell was going on? But just as she moved, a security guard stepped into her path. "This way, miss," he said, nodding politely toward a hallway roped in velvet. "VIPs only." "I'm not," her words died in her throat. On her way out, a woman in a navy blazer intercepted her near the elevators. "Elena Ruiz?" Her heart stuttered. "Yes." The woman smiled crisply. "Mr. West said you'll be reporting to West Corp Tower tomorrow. 9 sharp. He's expecting his new assistant." Assistant? Elena stumbled out into the cool night air, adrenaline still flooding her chest. What had just happened? How had a mistaken identity turned into a job offer from one of the most powerful CEOs in the city? Back in her apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the black card. She should toss it, forget it, pretend none of this happened. But she didn't, because for the first time in a long while, the impossible had cracked open a door, and she wasn't sure she wanted to shut it. The next morning, Elena stood in front of West Corp Tower in the same blazer she'd worn to her last job interview, gripping a coffee and 1,000 questions. She wasn't supposed to be here, and yet a part of her couldn't walk away. Not yet. Elena stepped into West Corp Tower like a thief sneaking into a museum, careful, out of place, and completely unsure of the rules. The receptionist didn't blink when she gave her name, just smiled and gestured to the private elevator. "Mr. West is expecting you," she said, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. She rode up alone, watching the city shrink below her through the glass walls. Each passing floor felt like another layer of her old life slipping away. When the doors opened, the silence hit first. Thick carpets, polished stone, and a view of the skyline that stretched for miles. Then she saw him. Julian West stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, one hand tucked in his pocket. His voice was low and clipped, directing someone in London to delay a product launch by 48 hours. He ended the call without acknowledging her, walked to a sleek table and picked up a folder. "You're not late," he said, not looking at her. "That's a good start." Elena cleared her throat. "Mr. West, I think you've mistaken me for..." He cut her off by handing her the folder. "Standard NDA, contract to follow. You'll be assisting me directly. Calendar, communications, internal logistics." She stared at him. "You still think I'm someone else?" He looked at her then, really looked. "I thought that. I don't anymore." She should have walked out. She should have thrown the folder on his desk and told him she wasn't playing whatever game this was. But the salary printed inside made her eyes widen. It was more than she'd made in the last 4 years combined. Rent, bills, her brother's tutoring, all of it handled. Still, money wasn't enough. "Why me?" she asked, voice firm. Julian's expression didn't change. "Because everyone else here is performing. You're not." That was the beginning. By noon, she had a badge, a temporary desk in the corner office adjacent to his, and a flood of emails that made her head spin. The learning curve wasn't steep, it was vertical. His instructions were brief, often without context. If she asked too many questions, he looked at her like she was a riddle he'd already solved. But she kept up. She worked late, learning the rhythms of the company. She deciphered his shorthand notes, memorized his preferred coffee order, and figured out the exact phrasing that turned his maybe into a yes. He didn't praise her. He didn't smile. But he didn't fire her either. The others in the office noticed. They smiled tightly, their greetings polite but hollow. One left a note on her desk that read, "Don't get comfortable. He goes through assistants like batteries." She crumpled it without a word. Every night she took the subway home and collapsed onto the couch. Her brother Leo would look up from his laptop and ask, "Is he a total psycho?" And she'd answer, "Probably." But she'd say it with a half smile that confused even her. Julian never flirted. He never lingered. But he watched. He listened. Once, after she flagged a mistake in a quarterly report, he didn't thank her. He just said "sharp catch" and moved on. It felt like winning the lottery. Then, one Thursday afternoon, everything shifted. He walked into her office with a clipboard and said, "You're coming with me tonight." She blinked. "Excuse me? On-site coordination, charity event. My last assistant handled these. I've never." "You'll be fine," he said, already turning away. That night, she wore a simple black dress, tied her hair back, and stood behind him at the event, whispering notes, managing staff, correcting a seating chart on the fly. People stared. They always stared. But tonight, the whispers weren't behind her back. They were to her face. "Isn't she the girl from that rooftop thing? I heard she just showed up and now runs his entire life. How do you think she got the job?" Elena kept her face neutral, but something inside her cracked. A hairline fracture. She wasn't sure if it was pride or pain. Then she saw her, tall, blonde, lips painted like armor. Ava Monroe, Julian's ex-fiancée, walking straight toward her. Ava Monroe moved through the crowd like she still owned it, head high, champagne glass in hand, and a smile so sharp it could cut diamonds. She didn't hesitate. She walked straight up to Elena, heels clicking with purpose. "You must be the new assistant," she said, her tone as smooth as silk dipped in poison. Elena met her gaze without flinching. "I am." Ava took a slow sip, eyes never leaving hers. "Interesting. You have that disposable look, like someone who won't last the month." Elena arched a brow. "You'd know about being disposable." For a brief moment, Ava's smile froze. Then she leaned in, just close enough for her breath to brush Elena's cheek. "Be careful, sweetheart. He doesn't keep people. He keeps silence. You'll see." Before Elena could respond, Julian appeared, his presence quiet but impossible to ignore. His eyes flicked between the two women, reading the tension like a spreadsheet. Ava smiled sweetly, kissed the air near his cheek, and disappeared into the crowd. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Elena stayed behind Julian, clipboard in hand, ticking off tasks and pretending she hadn't just been warned off like some naive intern. The car ride home was silent. His driver didn't speak. Neither did Julian until they pulled up to her apartment. "You handled her well," he said. Elena turned to him. "Is that what this is? A test?" He didn't answer. The next morning, everything changed. Her phone buzzed just after sunrise. The message was from Naomi. "Why are you on the internet?" Elena frowned, still half asleep, and opened her browser. Her breath caught in her throat. There, splashed across a gossip site with 1 million followers, was a photo of her and Julian from the Astoria Heights rooftop, the moment he handed her the black keycard. The headline screamed, "CEO Julian West caught recruiting escorts as staff, mystery hire raises eyebrows." The article didn't name her, but it didn't need to. The description, the timing, the implication, it all pointed directly to her. By the time she arrived at the office, whispers had turned into stares. A folder labeled HR Review sat ominously on her desk. She picked it up with trembling fingers. Her inbox was flooded with everything from thinly veiled concern to outright cruelty. At 5 o'clock sharp, her phone rang. Julian's assistant. "Mr. West wants to see you." She walked into his office with her back straight and her breath caught somewhere between fury and fear. He stood by the window, as always, watching the city like he owned it. "You saw the article," he said without turning. "Everyone has." "It's not true." "No," she replied. "But that doesn't matter, does it?" He turned then, his expression unreadable. "It matters to me." Elena crossed her arms. "Funny, you're the one who gave me that card. You're the one who assumed I was someone else." "I fixed it." "No," she said, her voice rising. "You promoted it. You handed me that job without knowing who I was, and when the fallout came, you stayed silent." He looked at her, not angry, just still. "I thought you were someone else," he said quietly. "When I realized you weren't, I didn't know how to undo it without making it worse." "You could have apologized." He looked down. "Why did you really hire me?" she asked. He met her eyes again. "Because when I mistook you, you didn't break. You didn't run. You stood there. That's not a reason." "It is to me," she shook her head. "Well, it's not enough for me." He didn't stop her when she walked out, but something in his eyes told her he wanted to. He just didn't know how. By sunrise, Elena was gone. No goodbye, no email. She packed her things, grabbed her brother, and took a train out of the city. For the first time in months, the silence was hers. The lake outside the cabin was still, wrapped in early autumn fog that softened everything it touched. Elena sat on the porch swing, a blanket around her shoulders, watching the morning unfold in silence. Her brother Leo was inside, still asleep, and for the first time in weeks, no one was whispering behind her back. No flashing cameras. No inbox full of speculation and venom. Just space. Space to think. Space to breathe. It'd been 8 days since she left the city. She hadn't answered any calls, hadn't checked the news, hadn't opened the work laptop she'd shoved into her suitcase at the last minute. But that didn't stop the weight from following her. The feeling of something unfinished, the echo of a conversation that should have happened and never did. So when a sleek black car crunched up the gravel driveway, her heart sank before she even saw him step out. Julian. No driver. No entourage. Just him in a dark coat, looking out of place, but unshaken. He climbed the porch steps slowly, holding a folder in one hand. Elena didn't stand, didn't speak. He stopped in front of her, his voice quiet. "Check the lease under your name. You left it in the system." She looked away. "May I come in?" She stood, opened the door, and let him inside. Leo wasn't there, probably walking the trail behind the cabin. They sat across from each other in a room that smelled faintly of coffee and pine wood. "You were right," Julian said. "About Ava. She leaked the story, used an old access code from her time on the PR team. We found the edits in her metadata." Elena didn't react. "I released a full internal report. You've been cleared." She looked at him then, eyes sharp. "It doesn't clear the silence." He nodded, slower this time. "I know." They sat in a quiet that stretched, no longer hostile, just full of things that hadn't been said yet. "I'm not good at this," he admitted finally. "I've spent most of my life managing outcomes. I don't know how to keep people, or how to lose them for the right reasons." Elena crossed her arms. "I never asked you to keep me." "I know," he said again. "That's why I want you back." She blinked. "You can't just say that like it's a job offer." "It's not," he said. "It's a hope." That stopped her. He wasn't wearing his usual armor, no perfect suit, no unreadable mask. He looked tired, human, real. She stepped closer, close enough to see the tension in his jaw, the regret in his eyes. "What is it you want, Julian? Another assistant? A fixer? Someone to manage your messes?" "No." "Then what?" He hesitated, and then finally said what she never expected to hear. "Time." She stared at him, heart thudding against her ribs. "I don't want to bring you back to a desk. I want to build something with you. Equal footing. No silence. No assumptions. She studied him, measured the weight of his words. Then she turned toward the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed him one. I needed space, she said softly, to remember who I am outside of your world. And now, I still don't miss the office, or the gossip, but I miss one thing. What's that? She looked up. You. Before the silence. Julian didn't smile, not exactly, but something in him eased. If I come back, she said, it won't be as your assistant. I wouldn't ask that. I won't stand behind you anymore, he nodded, then stand beside me. She paused, heart steady for the first time in weeks. All right, no handshake, no contract, just understanding. When they returned to the city, there were no statements, no press releases, just a quiet shift. Elena Ruiz, now Director of Strategic Operations. No whispers, no apologies, just presence. And this time she wasn't stepping into his world. She was building her own within it. 6 weeks after returning to the city, Elena stood behind the stage at the Zenith Conference Center, headset on, clipboard in hand, scanning the crowd through the narrow slit in the curtain. It was the company's biggest launch in years, a global campaign that had taken months to pull together, built on countless sleepless nights, tense meetings, and last-minute pivots. She had overseen nearly every piece of it, and tonight, it was hers to orchestrate. Not as someone hidden behind a more powerful man, not as a temporary assistant with whispers at her back, but as a leader in her own right. The lights dimmed. The first speaker walked out. The crowd leaned in. Elena moved through the wings, checking cues, adjusting timing with the AV team. She didn't stumble. She didn't hesitate. She belonged. When it was over, applause filled the air. She slipped off the stage before anyone could pull her into the spotlight. But as she turned toward the side exit, Julian was already waiting, holding out a glass of water. He didn't say much, just smiled, softly, not for the cameras, not for show, just for her. You missed your moment, he said. I wasn't looking for one, she replied. You earned it anyway. She glanced around. Where's your security detail? I left them. She raised an eyebrow. That doesn't sound like you. I'm working on being someone new. Do I know him yet? She asked. Julian tilted his head. I think you're the reason he exists. They walked out into the night together. No fanfare, no drama, just 2 people who had stood on opposite sides of power and pain and somehow met in the middle. Later that week, after most of the team had gone home, Elena stood by the window in her office. The skyline glittered outside, but her mind wasn't on the view. It was on the quiet, the kind that wasn't heavy or sharp, but steady. Julian appeared in the doorway. Sleeves rolled, tie loose, holding 2 cups of takeaway coffee. He handed one to her. You okay? He asked. She took it, didn't drink right away. Sometimes I think about that night on the rooftop, she said. If you hadn't mistaken me, I would have left. You would have, he agreed. And you never would have seen me again. Also true. He sipped. Then maybe I'm grateful for my mistake. She looked at him sideways. You're not afraid I'll use that against you? You already have, he said. 3 times. She laughed, surprised by herself. He stepped closer, close but not touching, and they stood like that for a while, watching the city hum below. I still owe you a real apology, he said eventually. For what? For letting silence speak louder than I ever did. For not protecting you when I should have. For assuming you'd be fine without ever asking. She stared into her cup, then up at him. You really mean that? I do, she nodded slowly. Then I'll accept it on one condition. What's that? You stop treating every feeling like a negotiation. He smiled, honest and tired. That may take time. I'm not in a rush. Julian turned him toward her fully. You were the only person who didn't try to win me. You just existed, and that terrified me. Why? Because I built my world on control, he said, and you got in without asking permission. I wasn't trying to, she whispered. I know. He reached for her hand, slow, careful. She didn't pull away. His fingers laced with hers, warm and steady, and for once neither of them needed to say anything more. 6 months later, Elena stood at the helm of a multi-city expansion deal. She wasn't behind the scenes anymore. She led meetings, she closed negotiations. People didn't whisper now, they listened. After the final presentation, she stepped off stage, exhausted. Julian met her in the wings, holding something small, a necklace, simple, elegant, the one he'd once given her, now with a tiny star charm added. Why the star? She asked. Because you never needed my world to shine, he said. You brought your own light. She smiled, took his hand, and they walked away. Not toward perfection, but something better. Something real. Life lesson from Elena and Julian's story. Some stories don't begin with perfect choices or flawless timing. Sometimes they start with a mistake, an assumption, a misunderstanding, or a misstep that sends everything spinning in a direction no one expects. But what matters is not how it begins, but how we choose to respond. Elena's journey shows us that dignity isn't about titles, and power isn't about control. True strength is found in standing your ground when the world misjudges you, in speaking your truth even when silence feels safer. She didn't climb by playing by anyone else's rules. She built her place with resilience, clarity, and quiet courage. Julian's transformation reminds us that even the strongest people have cracks. That vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the beginning of something real. Learning to apologize, to listen, and to let someone stand beside you, not behind you, is what turns control into connection. Their story teaches us that trust can be rebuilt, love can be earned, and second chances are worth fighting for, if both people are willing to grow. Mistakes don't define us. How we rise from them does. Now tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more real stories about resilience, redemption, and the kind of love that doesn't always come easy, but always comes honest.